Hello and welcome to this Red Gamer Tech video. Myself, Marta, where as always I'm here with the latest from the tech world in the last 24 or so hours. Today I'm going to kick things off with yet more regarding the GTX 1660 Ti. Just the other day I of course discussed the price that had been confirmed for the card, which of course is $280, and of course a leaked benchmark for Final Fantasy 15 for the card, and now we have yet another leak thanks once again to Tom Apisak, and this time it's for Ashes of the Singularity at the crazy preset at 1080p. So what scores do we actually see? Well, according to Apisak's tweet, it's getting around 4,800 in score, so to give that a bit of context, the 1070 scored 4,900, the 1060 is 3,800, and the RTX 2060 scored 5,500. So we're looking about a 25% increase versus the GTX 1060, and is roughly on par with the GTX 1070, while of course falling about 15-ish% behind the 1660 Ti. So it basically going toe-to-toe with a 1070 is pretty damn nice for $280. You might recall that the 1070 was £300 to £400 depending on the model that you got at launch, so not too bad. Now this is by no means a complete picture, so by no means am I saying go rush out and pre-order the card, no. What I am saying is this looks promising, so wait and see for the reviews, wait and see for more benchmarks, synthetic and gaming, so we can get a complete picture of the card to see what it offers overall. One benchmark does not an overall picture make. So this is promising, but just hold your horses for a sec. Now, another thing that we've been talking a lot about lately is our next topic, and it is a couple of items regarding ray tracing, as a couple of developers have weighed in. And the first set of comments I want to discuss is actually from the Metro Exodus developers 4A Games. Now, as you undoubtedly recall, Metro Exodus is one of the very, very few games that actually support ray tracing at the moment. And they made some very interesting comments about ray tracing in a recent interview with Eurogamer's Digital Foundry, which of course is going to be linked in the description below this video. I would highly recommend you give it a read. Now, the reason I find his comments so interesting here is that, well, you may recall recently there was rumours that the next generation Xbox is going to be using ray tracing, and they were actually asked about the possibility of ray tracing becoming available on hardware without RT cores, such as say a next generation console, and according to rendering programmer Ben Ashard, that is apparently possible. And he said, quote, "It doesn't really matter, be it dedicated hardware or just enough compute power to do it in shader units, I believe it would be viable. For the current generations, yes, multiple solutions is the way to go. In terms of the viability of ray tracing on next-gen consoles, the hardware doesn't have to specifically be RTX cores. The cores aren't the only thing that matters when it comes to ray tracing. They are fixed function hardware that speed up the calculations specifically relating to the BVH intersection tests. Those calculations can be done in standard compute if the computer cores are numerous and fast enough, which we believe they will be on next-gen consoles. In fact, any GPU that is running DX12 will be able to run DXR, since DXR is just an extension of DX12. So it seems that the idea of ray tracing on the next-gen consoles might not be as far-fetched as it initially sounds, but of course we should wait and see exactly what is going on with the next-gen consoles, and of course with Navi as well. That has heavily been rumoured to be the GPU architecture that is going to be at the heart of both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Scarlet flagship console, but of course that could highly be wrong. It could be something completely different, something based on Navi that is so tweaked and customised that it's barely recognisable Navi, or it could just be something we've actually never seen. It's highly possible. But that's again not the only comment we actually have on ray tracing. We actually have one from the Star Citizen developer. Now, the reason I want to bring up his comments here is that I've been talking a lot lately about how there's not a lot of support for ray tracing at the moment. There's only a couple of games that support it, but of course we've recently had news that Unreal Engine 4 is getting support for ray tracing, and of course Jensen Huang, the Nvidia CEO, let slip that Unity is going to be getting it as well. And So basically, someone asked the devs of Star Citizen on over in their forums, quote, "Do you, as I, believe that RTX tech will save you devs so much work farther along and look absolutely spanking?" And well, one of the Cloud Imperium devs, unfortunately, does not seem overly keen on the idea of ray tracing, and he said, quote, "Not in the slightest. I expect, if we use it, it'll be a massive headache and time sink, but might give us some subtle improvements on looks or performance if we get it right. The added headache is that whatever we offered would have an as well feature rather than an instead. Developing a feature for a single manufacturer's top-end cards means also maintaining feature parity for someone else's hardware. Personally, I like to use it to make these shadows crisper." So of course, this is just one developer's opinion. He by no means speaks for all developers, or he's even pretending that he is, but it's sort of interesting to get a peek behind the curtain, as it were, and sort of get a look into whether or not we're likely to see more ray tracing games come up, because as I myself pointed out the other day when discussing the Unreal Engine 4 thing, yes, it's fantastic that we're seeing it being added to one of the most popular engines, like basically ever, but it's still down to the developer to decide if it's worth their time, effort, man hours, and of course if they have the skill to utilize it correctly, because it is a brand new technology, and as talented as a developer crew might be, they might be like, "Do you know what, I don't feel comfortable having it in this game, let's work on it behind the scenes and have it for our next game," because obviously nothing's worse than doing something and just making a botched job of it. You'd rather it look really good. If you're going to make a whole big thing about having ray tracing, if a game came out ray tracing, it's going to be all over the press, because it's one of the few games that actually support it. So yeah, maybe that's sort of peek behind the curtain as to one of the reasons why we're not seeing as many ray tracing games as Nvidia perhaps hoped. But we have one final ray tracing topic for today, but this is something actually that Nvidia are planning to do. And this is actually something they're going to be discussing at this year's GDC, or more specifically Nvidia's Adam Mars, where he is going to be basically discussing a technique that will utilize a tech by the name of adaptive ray tracing to improve temporal anti-aliasing, or AA as you might otherwise know it. And essentially what he's trying to do here is deliver quality levels that approach that of real-time super sampling. Now, on the actual listing for the GDC conference, there is a quote which reads, quote, "We discuss a pragmatic approach to real-time super sampling that extends common temporal anti-aliasing techniques with adaptive ray tracing. We've integrated our solution into Unreal Engine 4 and demonstrated how it removes the blurring and ghosting effects associated with standard temporal anti-aliasing, achieves quality approaching 16 times super sampling, and operates within a 16 millisecond frame budget." So this, of course, could be rather interesting, and I'm definitely going to be keeping my eyes peeled for any news coming out of that particular conference, because he definitely has my attention on that particular one. But I think we've talked enough about ray tracing and Nvidia stuff, don't you? I think so. So let's move on to Intel, shall we? Or Intel Xe, to be more exact. It's a small thing, but a cool thing that I want to discuss anyway, as they have issued a rather large patch for the Intel Linux graphics driver, and basically is adding support for their discrete GPU, which was previously known as Arctic Sound, but of course is now better known as Intel Xe. And there are 42 patches happening here, so not even just one big patch, just a lot of them, and basically we are seeing them go towards full driver support for Intel Xe, which of course we are expecting in the year 2020. And there is even a tweet from Intel about this which reads, quote, "Local memory implementation is the first of many steps towards robust Linux support for our future discrete graphics solutions." Now, of course, this is just the beginning. There is still a lot of work to be done to get the graphics, or the Linux platform ready for this particular discrete graphics cards, but they are, of course, aware of that and steadily working on getting it ready. They, of course, have plenty of time before 2020, basically the entire year, although it's going to flash past, it always does, but still cool to see nonetheless. But speaking of GPU tech, we're going to finish things up with yet more Intel news on this. So what you have here is that Intel have acquired the Indian startup Eneida, who you may not have heard of, but basically they develop custom design processors that were to be used in wearable devices that were optimized for high energy efficiency. So obviously they have a lot of knowledge when it comes to well, energy efficiency, because that is a huge deal when it comes to graphics performance. Power equals heat, which equals more expensive heat sinks, which of course means noisier fans. That is something that we have seen both companies, that being AMD and Nvidia, work to improve over the last few years. But judging from the statement made to Times of India, it looks like, well, of course, their knowledge here and their patents, of course. I think what Intel is more interested in here is the manpower. They have over 1,000 engineers with a lot of experience. And Intel said, quote, Intel acquired engineering resources from Eneida Systems, a silicon and platform services provider based in Hyderabad. This transaction provides Intel, with an experienced SoC team to help build a world-class discrete GPU business. So, of course, they have been hard at work on Intel Xe for numerous years now, but they are, of course, not going to stop there, or even with Jupiter Sound. Beyond that, they are obviously looking to strive to, well, improve and become a real threat to both AMD and Nvidia over the years. We had some recent comments which basically said that, Intel are unlikely to topple the current kingpin, which of course the RTX 2080 Ti, with their first offering, but it's not reasonable to even expect that from their very first iteration, and I'm sure Intel are aware of this as well. So, the more talents they can get on board, obviously their patents and technologies will be helpful, but I think it's really that experience they want in how to make these chips energy efficient, because that is a critical, and I do mean critical, component of graphics performance. So, interesting stuff. Plans for the future being laid down here by Intel. Anyway, that is me done for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, your support is highly appreciated, especially as this video has gone on a bit longer than I anticipated, but hey ho. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.